My stepsons ordered me, "Know your place in our house." I realized my place wasn't beside them, but with my money. That evening, they were left with nothing. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now let's get started. My name is Michael. I am 56 years old, and I have lived long enough to know that betrayal does not always come in thunderous storms. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in the mouths of children you have fed, clothed, and defended, until their words strike you with a clarity that burns hotter than fire. It was an ordinary evening, or so I thought. The table was set. The cheap chandelier hummed faintly above, and the stale rhythm of our dinners played out once again. Emily sat across from me, the woman I believed for years was my partner, and beside her were her two sons' boys I had fed, educated, ferried across town, and tolerated with a patience I thought noble. I had grilled the meat, poured the wine, placed the plates as if this house were united by bonds stronger than resentment. Then they looked at me steady, unblinking, and delivered their sentence. "Know your place in this house." 4 words spat like bullets across the table. I saw Emily's eyes flicker, but she said nothing. Her silence was permission, her refusal to intervene a quiet endorsement of the contempt that filled the air. In that instant, everything became clear. My place was not here, with their mockery. My place was not under the roof I paid for, among those who fed on my labor while laughing at my presence. My place was with my money, with the fruits of my endless work, with the self-respect I had buried under years of compromise. I smiled faintly, because the truth always arrives like a knife, sharp and merciless. But inside, something broke. To understand that moment, you must know what came before it. I was not a man who had floated easily through life. When I was 36, my first wife left. She walked out the door one morning while my son was still a child, his breakfast untouched, his eyes wide with questions I couldn't answer. She left nothing but her clothes scattered across the bedroom and the sour smell of abandonment. No explanation, no letter, not even the decency of a goodbye. I woke up one day a husband, and by nightfall I was a single father, clutching a bewildered boy who looked at me like I had the answers to every unspoken fear. From that day forward, my life was not my own. I worked every shift I could find, days in construction, nights in warehouses, weekends in whatever place would pay me enough to cover rent and keep the lights on. I came home drenched in sweat, my hands calloused and cracked, my body begging for sleep. Yet I still found myself sitting at the kitchen table with my son, helping him with his homework by the light of a flickering lamp. When he needed new shoes, I went without lunch for weeks. When he needed a winter coat, I patched up the one I'd worn for a decade. Birthdays were quiet, but I scraped together enough for a cake. Sometimes bought with coins counted one by one at the grocery counter. I can still see his small face lit by candles, still hear him laugh when I fumbled through singing. Those moments kept me alive. Years bled into years, and slowly we made it. He grew tall, strong, and I believed my sacrifices had meaning. I told myself, this is fatherhood, not the joy of ease, but the burden of endurance. So when I met Emily, I thought life had finally decided to show me kindness. She was warm at first, her laughter soft, her voice carrying promises of partnership, of a shared burden. She had 2 boys of her own, and I believed naively that my experience as a single father would bind us together. I thought we would build something solid, a home where children knew stability, where loneliness finally gave way to family. But illusions are dangerous things. From the beginning, her sons kept me at arm's length. They looked at me not as a man who had stepped into their lives, but as an intruder. They refused my advice, mocked my efforts, treated my presence as though it contaminated the air. At first, I convinced myself it was teenage rebellion, the kind of natural resistance children often show to authority. I told myself time would soften them, that patience, consistency, and quiet endurance would bridge the gap. I was wrong. The years I gave them were not years of fatherhood, but years of servitude. I covered their tuition when their grades sagged, but they still wanted chances. I paid for their vacations, their school trips, their gadgets, their endless list of wants. I renovated the house so they could have bigger rooms, bought new furniture so they could invite friends over without shame, kept the Wi-Fi running so their lives never suffered the indignity of disconnection. Thousands of dollars slipped from my accounts, month after month, and never once did I hear gratitude. Not from them, not from Emily. Every demand came not as a request, but as an expectation. Pay, provide, deliver. And I did. God help me, I did. Because I believed family meant sacrifice. But sacrifice without respect is slavery. And I was a slave. The warning signs were everywhere, but I refused to see them. The laughter behind my back when I mispronounced the name of some band they liked. The way they asked Emily to confirm even the simplest instruction I gave them, as if my words had no weight until stamped with her approval. The way she allowed it, always smoothing things over, always excusing their cruelty as growing pains. I told myself love would heal it. I told myself patience was noble. I told myself fathers endure. Then came that dinner. Their faces were hard, rehearsed, like soldiers preparing for battle. Emily sat between us, her fork frozen halfway to her lips, her silence stretching across the table like a wall. And they said it, know your place in this house. Not once, twice, as if to carve it into me. And I realized my place was not as their stepfather, not as Emily's partner, not even as a man worthy of basic respect. My place in their eyes was nothing but a wallet and open vein they could drain until I had nothing left. That was the night the illusion shattered, the night I stopped believing patience was virtue, the night I understood the truth. I was not family. I was currency, and I swore to myself I would never be humiliated again. At first I excused it. That was my mistake. I told myself their indifference was normal, that teenagers lash out at anyone who isn't their blood. I repeated it like a prayer. They'll warm up with time. I wanted to believe that distance could be crossed, that contempt could erode if I only gave more. More money, more patience, more silence in the face of insult. But contempt does not erode. It calcifies. The signs were subtle at first, little fractures running through the glass of my illusions. They ignored me when I spoke, but leapt to attention the moment Emily repeated the same words. If I suggested a family outing, they rolled their eyes and smirked. But if their mother echoed it, they agreed as though the idea had been hers all along. Every joke at my expense was permitted, every dismissal tolerated, every cut delivered beneath the mask of teenage sarcasm. Emily said I was imagining things. They're kids, she told me. You're too sensitive. She brushed off their contempt with a smile, as if cruelty loses its sting when wrapped in the excuse of youth. But cruelty is cruelty, no matter how young the hand that delivers it. I kept working. I kept providing. I convinced myself that generosity could buy belonging. When Jake needed braces, I signed the payment plan. When Ryan wanted new hockey equipment, I paid the bill without question. When their phones shattered, when their laptops broke, when their dreams stretched further than their mother's means, it was my hand that reached into my pocket. Vacations to coastal resorts, weekend trips to the mountains, home renovations so they could each have their own space. Everything was funded by me. Thousands upon thousands, bleeding out of my accounts until I stopped seeing money as mine at all. It became theirs by default, as though my labor existed solely to sustain their comforts. I told myself it was worth it, that one day they would look back and see who had stood behind them, that one day they would acknowledge I had carried them further than their biological father ever cared to. But gratitude never came. Instead came entitlement. Michael, can you transfer me money? My card isn't working. That was Jake, texting me at midnight while out with his friends. No greeting. No, please. Just a command disguised as a statement. Michael, I need more for the deposit. The landlord won't wait. Ryan sending me an email written like an invoice, as though I were his personal bank clerk. And Emily, always Emily, softening the edges. They're just stressed, she'd say when I showed her the messages. It's hard being their age. You know how it is. Yes, I knew how it was. I had lived it, except at their age I wasn't drinking with friends in clubs paid for by someone else's labor. I was raising a son alone, working 2 jobs, scraping together pennies for rent. Their stress was a luxury compared to the war I had fought every single day of my youth. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. They laughed at me openly, sneering when I misused some slang word, mocking the way I dressed, whispering in each other's ears while their eyes flickered toward me. My role was not father, not even stepfather. My role was financier, the invisible wallet whose presence was felt only when it failed to open fast enough. The pressure mounted. Bills arrived faster than my paychecks could refill the account. Tuition payments drained me. Renovations swallowed me. Vacations gutted me. I worked longer hours, agreed to projects that devoured my weekends, accepted every overtime shift until exhaustion carved shadows into my face. And still, the demands grew. Always more, always urgent. Emily noticed my weariness. She told me once, late at night, "You're pushing yourself too hard. They'll understand if we can't do everything." But the next morning, Ryan appeared in the kitchen asking about a new laptop. And Emily, instead of saying no, turned to me with a look that was half plea, half command, as though my exhaustion was irrelevant, as though my only function was to produce. That was when I realized the truth. She had grown comfortable with it, with my servitude, with my sacrifices being treated as obligations rather than gifts. She didn't fight for me, didn't demand her children show me respect. She expected me to endure it quietly. And I did. For years I did. But the cracks widened. I remember one evening vividly. I had spent 12 hours on a construction site, my body aching, my lungs filled with dust. I came home late, hands raw, back screaming, and found the boys sprawled on the couch, video games blaring, empty soda cans scattered like trash across the floor I had installed with my own hands. I asked them to clean it up. Just that, a simple request. They looked at me, then turned to Emily. "Do we have to?" And she, tired, sighed. "Yes, boys, please do what he asks." Her words, not mine, moved them. They rose slowly, grumbling, glaring at me as though I had wronged them by expecting basic decency. And I stood there, feeling smaller than the dirt clinging to my boots, realizing that even in my own home, my authority was borrowed. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Emily's breathing beside me, and wondered when exactly I had stopped being a man in my own life. I told myself again it was temporary, that respect would come with age, that once the boys saw the breadth of what I had given, they would regret their cruelty. But deep down, I knew the truth. They would never see me as anything more than a wallet, and the weight of that truth pressed down heavier than any debt. Still, I endured. Still, I paid. I told myself love demanded sacrifice even when love was nowhere to be found. But every new demand felt less like a request and more like an order. Tuition, laptops, car repairs, vacations, each command delivered without hesitation, without thanks. The word please vanished from their vocabulary, replaced with need and now. And with every transaction, a little more of me disappeared. By the time the breaking point came, I was already hollow, a ghost in the home I had built, a provider without identity, a man stripped of respect, enduring humiliation disguised as family. I should have stopped earlier. I should have drawn the line years before. But I didn't. I let them carve pieces of me away until there was almost nothing left. Until the night they said the words that destroyed the last illusion I clung to. Know your place in this house. And I finally understood. My place was never theirs to dictate. The breaking point did not come with a scream. It did not come with fists slamming the table or plates shattering against the wall. It came with calm precision, as though the cruelty had been practiced, sharpened, rehearsed behind closed doors until they were certain of its effect. It was another dinner, one of those evenings where I tried, God, how I still tried to stitch together the illusion of family. I grilled the steaks, set the table, poured the wine. I told myself the ritual of a meal could anchor us, that perhaps food and time could accomplish what years of sacrifice had failed to achieve. The boys sat across from me, eyes heavy with disdain, smirks tugging at their mouths. Emily sat between us, her silence as constant as the ticking of the clock. We ate in a tension so thick it clung to the walls. Then Jake, the elder, looked up. His voice was flat, cold, deliberate. "Know your place." Ryan, quick to echo, smirked as he added, "Yeah, know your place in this house." Two voices, one message. Not a slip of the tongue. Not teenage rebellion. A declaration. Emily froze. Her fork hovered in the air, but no words followed. She did not defend me, did not rebuke them, did not even look in my direction. Her silence was her answer. I smiled faintly, a mask to hide the rupture inside me, but something shattered beyond repair. In that moment, I realized they had never seen me as family, never respected the labor I poured into their lives, never cared for the sacrifices that had cost me years of my strength, my health, my soul. To them, I was not a father, not even a stepfather. I was an ATM machine with a face they despised. That night, after the dishes were cleared and the house grew quiet, I sat alone at the dining table. Papers spread before me. Bank statements, tuition invoices, utility bills, credit card balances. A record of my servitude. Every number on the page was evidence of my humiliation. The bourbon in my glass burned as I swallowed it, but it steadied me. For the first time in years, I saw everything with clarity. If they truly believed I had no place in their lives, then I would stop funding the lives they built on my back. I moved with deliberate calm. No rage, no chaos, only cold resolve. I logged into my accounts and one by one cut the strings. Jake's tuition payment canceled. Ryan's allowance frozen. The household renovations still tied to my credit halted. Every automatic transfer, every quiet debit, every line of generosity, I severed them all. By the time dawn touched the windows, the house stood on new ground. My money was mine again. Emily stirred when I slipped into bed beside her. She murmured something, half asleep. I stared at the ceiling and whispered nothing. I knew the storm would come soon enough, and it did. The next evening, Jake stormed down the stairs, his face pale with panic, his phone clutched in his hand. "My tuition payment bounced," he shouted, voice cracking. "I got an overdue notice. What the hell did you do?" I sat calmly at the table, the same place where he had humiliated me. I looked him in the eye. "I did exactly what you told me to do. Nothing. Because according to you, I have no place here." His jaw dropped, his anger faltering as the meaning sank in. "You can't just... College is in 2 months? Do you know what you've done?" Before I could answer, Ryan entered, holding his own phone. "My card isn't working. I tried to buy something, and it declined. What's going on?" I turned to him, my tone flat. "Your allowance isn't coming from me anymore. Talk to your father." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Emily appeared in the doorway, laundry basket in her arms. She froze when she saw their faces, their fury, their confusion. "What's going on?" she asked. I stood, slow and deliberate. "I stopped paying. Tuition, allowances, extras, all of it. From now on, your biological father can handle his responsibilities." Her face drained of color. The basket slipped from her hands, clothes spilling onto the floor. "You what?" "I stopped paying," I repeated. Her voice rose, sharp with disbelief. "Are you insane? Do you understand what this means? Jake's college, Ryan's expenses? Oh my God, how could you do this to them?" I met her eyes unflinching. How could I not? They told me to know my place. So I listened. And my place is not to fund people who despise me. Jake slammed his fist on the table. "You're ruining my life. You've paid all this time. You can't just stop now." I turned to him, my voice like ice. "I can, and I did. You told me I have no authority over you. Authority and responsibility are bound together. If I have none of the first, I owe you none of the second." Ryan's voice shook, thinner, almost pleading. "So what are we supposed to do? Dad doesn't have money. He can't cover this." I didn't soften. "Then you'll finally learn what responsibility looks like. He is your father. You claim him. You honor him. Let him carry you." Emily's voice broke into a scream. "You're punishing them for being kids. They don't understand." I cut her words with a glare. "No, they understood enough. They weaponized your silence against me. They treated me like nothing, and you allowed it. Well, nothing doesn't pay tuition." The room dissolved into noise. Jake shouting, Ryan muttering, Emily begging. But I felt calm, detached. as though I had finally stepped outside the cage I had lived in for years. For once, I was not bending. For once, I was not apologizing for demanding respect. That night, they raged, they pleaded, they cursed. But my decision stood. Because when a man is told he has no place, he either accepts humiliation or he walks away from the chains disguised as family. And I chose to walk away. I did not walk away from family. I walked away from humiliation. There is a difference, though many will refuse to see it. They will say I abandoned them. They will say I was cold, ruthless, heartless. But none of them sat at my table the night I was told to know my place. None of them carried the weight of years spent financing contempt. None of them lived in a house where every laugh was at their expense and every silence was a blade turned inward. The morning after I cut them off, the house felt like a battlefield stripped of sound. Jake slammed doors as though noise could reverse the reality he faced. Ryan moved through the rooms in silence, pale, his phone clutched like a lifeline, waiting for a miracle deposit that would never come. Emily avoided my eyes, her footsteps quick, her voice cold. She did not sleep beside me that night. She turned her body away as though my decision had made me unrecognizable. But I did not waver. Within days, the cracks widened. Jake's college sent a warning notice. Pay immediately or lose enrollment. Ryan's allowance card was frozen, his online orders rejected. The luxuries they had taken for granted began to collapse one by one. Their world, built on my labor, suddenly revealed its true fragility. The arguments grew louder. Emily accused me of cruelty. She told me I was destroying their futures, that a man should sacrifice without condition. She begged me to reconsider, her voice trembling between anger and desperation. But I held my ground. Respect is the condition, I told her. Without it, sacrifice is slavery, and I will not be a slave in my own house. She wept. The boys raged, but the line I had drawn held firm. Then came the inevitable, the call to their biological father, the man who had ghosted them for years, who had offered presents only in absence, who appeared in photographs but never in responsibilities. They reached out to him now, desperate to transfer the weight I had dropped back onto his shoulders. When he arrived, I saw the fear in their eyes. They expected him to rescue them, to step into the role they had always insisted was his alone. But the truth was clear the moment he opened his mouth. He could not. He did not have the means, the stability, or the will. He looked at me across the porch, anger simmering in his voice. You can't just abandon them like this. And I answered, steady, calm, unflinching. I didn't abandon them. I gave them exactly what they demanded. They said I had no place, so I stepped out of the place they denied me. The silence that followed was heavier than steel. Jake's anger cracked into panic. Ryan's bravado collapsed into fear. Emily's tears flowed freely as she pleaded for compromise. But I had already compromised for years. I had bent until I broke. And when a man is broken long enough, eventually he finds strength in the shards. They left with him that day. Emily packed bags in a fury, the boys following in silence, their eyes darting toward me with hatred and fear tangled together. They believed leaving was victory. They believed their absence would punish me. But when the car pulled away, when the gravel settled and the house fell into silence, I felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. The house, once filled with noise and contempt, stood quiet. No footsteps pounding above me. No laughter at my expense. No silence sharpened into weapons. Only stillness. Only air that belonged to me again. I walked through each room slowly, deliberately. The kitchen where I had cooked meals no one thanked me for. The living room where they sprawled, laughing at the man who paid for their comforts. The bedrooms renovated by my hands, their walls echoing now with absence. And for the first time I saw the truth. I had never lived in a family. I had lived in a cage decorated to look like one. Days passed, then weeks. The calls came, as I knew they would. Jake first, his voice sharp with panic disguised as anger. They're threatening to suspend me. You have to pay. I answered simply, no. Then Ryan, his voice softer, edged with fear. Dad doesn't have enough, please. Just until we figure it out. Again, one word. No. Then Emily, her voice breaking, begging me to reconsider. They're just boys. They don't understand what they've done. I answered her with the truth. They understood enough to spit on me, and you understood enough to stay silent. After that, the silence grew deeper, and I learned to live inside it. I cooked meals for one. I sat on the porch with coffee in the mornings, bourbon in the evenings. I watched the sun set without the weight of their disdain pressing against my chest. I worked, I slept, I breathed. Slowly I remembered who I was outside of their demands. There were nights when doubt crept in, nights when I wondered if I had gone too far, if my refusal to bend had cost me something irretrievable. But then I remembered the sound of their voices across the table, those four words sharp as knives: know your place. And I remembered the decades before Emily, the nights I spent alone with my son, scraping by but never surrendering respect. I had raised a child in love and struggle, and he had grown into a man who honored me. Respect was possible. Gratitude was possible. I had lived it once. I refused to accept less now. Months later, Emily called again. Her voice was quieter, thinner, the fire gone. The boys are struggling, she said. They're angry, but they miss the life you gave them. I said nothing at first. Then, it wasn't life I gave them. It was mine, and they wasted it. She cried softly. I did not, because I had finally learned the truth. Love and respect cannot be bought with money. They cannot be earned through sacrifice alone. If they are not freely given, they do not exist. My stepsons lost their easy source of living. Emily lost the man she believed would carry her sons forever. And I regained my freedom. Now I sit in silence, asking myself one question that echoes in the emptiness of this house. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to finally demand the respect that should have been mine from the beginning? Or was this the only way to remind them that family without respect is not family at all, but chains disguised as love? You tell me, what would you have done?